Welcome back. It's now 25 minutes to 7. This is Morning Express. In case you're joining us now, well, welcome aboard. And it's time for us to look at the dailies. And joining me in studio to have that conversation, I have two fine gentlemen. To my extreme left, we have Barack Muluka, who is the ANC Secretary General. Good morning.
Morning,
and
Mike.
Thank you for joining us. We also have Professor Wajakoya, who is a international law immigration expert. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. All right, and this morning, let's start on a different note. And in the Standard on page 38 is one of a day of history, and that's Pompeo positive as Trump and Kim Jong-un historic meeting. This is definitely history being made. And maybe just to hear your comments, let me start with you, Prof, on this historic meeting between Kim Jong-un and Trump.
First of all, I'm very grateful, and I have to thank the people of the Republic of South Korea for having appointed me years ago in California to speak on behalf of them in what was actually dreamt of the future of North and South Korea. So I'm taking this opportunity to thank my friend Sue Moon in California. And when I see this happening, I extend that glorification to the current President Uhuru Kenyatta's handshake with the Raila, which has opened a liturgy of handshakes around the world.
It has filtered all the way to Kim Jong-un. And,
yes, and Kenya opens up everything. We have had a president of Kenyan descent in America. We lead in world championships when it comes to athletics, and now we are leading in handshakes. So Trump has learned something from Kenya, and we are grateful. And when I go to the US, I think this time I'm going to extend my hand as well to the North Koreans that I know that were trying to speak at that particular time.
Barack, you think this is an overspill of Kenya's handshake going all the way to the US and North Korea?
Absolutely not. Of course, Professor Wajakoya handles it with a light touch. But we know historically that when we talk about the North and South Korea divide, that what we are witnessing today are the residual effects of the Cold War. That we know that the Korean Peninsula went in two different directions, north and south, as long ago as 1952, at the height of the Cold War between the East and the West. And that one would have to contextualize it within the so-called Harry Truman doctrine, the Truman doctrine. At that time, you have got Stalin, Joseph Stalin, in the Soviet Union, trying to spread communism throughout the world, and you have got Harry Truman, and the World War has just ended, and then there's that confrontation. Within the same context, you'd have to see what happened in Vietnam, where you had South and North Vietnam, the Viet Congs, the Vietnamese War that took 13 years. And there's a sense in which what is happening now is coming a wee too late. We know that the Cold War itself officially ended in 1989 when Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher announced in Lisbon, Portugal, the end of that confrontation. You'd have to see it in the context of people like Mikhail Gorbachev and their contribution to the current post-Cold War dispensation. So I think it's something a lot more complex than just a handshake as such. Time obviously doesn't allow us to get into the nitty-gritty.
And I can tell that you're definitely an encyclopedia of history in regards to where we're coming from. Yes, Prof.
Yes, and to qualify and to make some kind of footnotes, what my colleague has said, one of the things people do not know is the Japanese occupation of Korea and the war that followed thereafter. And when Koreans were freed from the Japanese occupation, they were made a dummy state. They were disarmed, and because of the Cold War, the infighting, China and Russia had already taken a monopoly in Northern Korea following the episode that happened when Cubans were working as surrogates of the Chinese in the Western Hemisphere. So by so saying, or by so acknowledging that South Korea was a surrogate of Japan, and when Japan was disarmed by the United States, Japan also became a toothless surrogate. So the two nations, as we speak, did not have any point to have a standing army that would be would stand as a threat in the Korean Peninsula. And that's what now brought the epistemology of South Korea coming into the development arena, which was actually followed by countries like Singapore. And then that the overflow was the Japanese, to think of a way of now becoming a superpower in an indirect way without the armament. And that's why now we look at South Korea as a superpower, a super economic power, as a result of the disharmony that had happened previously.
All right. And Barak, maybe as we wind up on that, just
Yes.
what we should expect on a very, what would I call it, a broken down version of why this is important, why it's such a big deal that Kim Jong-un and Trump would actually meet face to face. This is something that has not happened in a while, but what does that mean?
First, I think I want to say that South Korea isn't really a superpower as such. Is a Western and especially American surrogate, and that it's one of those that you would call a dummy superpower, if you are so to speak, because just pull away the American muscle and it would go down like a house of cards. But significantly, it's the question of the West being, and particularly America, being concerned about nuclear power, the development and possible proliferation. In North Korea, we have seen how many times in the recent past Kim Jong-un has been testing missiles. And of course, one has got to understand the geopolitics, the proximity between North Korea and the United States of America, and the possibility that they could be infiltrated by international terrorism, and what this could mean. We have seen that there were efforts, certainly under President Obama, about the Iranian nuclear capacity, and which President Trump has negated. It's a bag full of contradictions. On the one hand, he's getting out of the Iranian deal. On the other hand, he's trying to get into North Korean deal. One way is to see what's going to happen. Today, the best that could happen, I think, would be the coming into place of a framework for future engagement between the United States and North Korea. But interestingly, this is happening at a time when Trump is also increasingly distancing the United States from NATO. We know about the formation of the Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in 1949, soon after the ending of the Second World War, as a security militarist bloc. And you have seen from the recently concluded G7 meeting in Vancouver, Canada, that they've come out pulling in different directions. So it's going to be interesting to see how America is going to advance this outside NATO.
Outside NATO. Well, let's wait and see. And if you'd like to get more details of that particular meeting and what it really entails and the history of it, you have it in the Standard this morning. And let's now come back to matters local headlines. And let's start off with the Standard, where the headline is "Why Our Debt is an Unfolding Disaster." We do know that the budget is scheduled to be read on Thursday, but the national debt, which has been increasing at a very alarming rate despite fact, economists coming and warning that this is potentially a disaster. The Standard has it here, and Treasury is having sleepless nights over rising amounts of money owed amid shrinking revenues. There is less coming in, yet the amount of debt has gone up. Let me start with you, Professor, and your thoughts on where we are as a country on debt. There are those who've said that borrowing is not necessarily a problem, so long as that money goes into the right use. However, when the money is borrowed but goes into the wrong places, into people's pockets, and Kenya is left with a huge debt, then potentially we are sinking deeper.
I would like Kenyans not to pay taxes from today.
Is that even a possibility?
Yeah, well, if they can, if I was able to.
Unfortunately, as a lawyer, you will also be paying taxes as soon as you leave here, as soon as you charge your legal fees. KRA will be on your case to pay those taxes.
And that's why I'm saying Kenyans should boycott paying taxes. Because the issues we have today are issues that have been brought about by politicians. The stealing, the amount of stealing we have seen, particularly from members of parliament who are now not being told not to mention, not to talk rhetoric, politics, not to mix petty politics, as some of the politicians are hard speaking today. Politicians who have stolen, and they're the first to blow the trumpet, and they're the first to go on press conference, and are the first to go and address Kenyans in rallies, stupid political rallies, by telling Kenyans that, you know what, don't mix petty politics in corruption. And yet they are the ones who have refused to issue press statement, or I don't know what to say. They have refused to come out in the plain view of Kenyans by issuing press statements on corruption how we're going to tackle them.
If we're to go by your advice of not paying taxes, how does that help us dealing with debt?
Let every Kenyan now deal with his own way, because what is the point of paying tax and tomorrow you'll hear somebody stealing 8 billion, Kenya Pipeline, Kenyatta National Hospital, the National Cereal Board, and the politicians who have been mentioned or who are likely to be mentioned cannot come out to issue press statement.
All right. Barack Muluka, well, the Englishman says that two wrongs don't make a right.
Absolutely.
So would that be a way to go?
Absolutely. We must continue paying taxes. I think paying taxes is a noble thing, and every citizen needs to pay taxes. I just start off where we left off on Tuesday last week when we were winding down. We talked about eternal vigilance, and Kenyans need to be eternally vigilant. They need to hold their leaders to account without saying that this one is from my village, this one is from my community. That is what ails us. We are able to allow ourselves to be cannon fodder for the political class, which is also the stealing class, whenever these things are happening, and we start looking at them with the detached disinterest of external observers.
All right, and
maybe if I may also add what my brother has said. Like me, I'm very pained, because as a resident of the United States and UK, I have to pay tax 4 times. In the US, I have to pay state taxes. I just came back, and I have to pay federal taxes. And I'm also obligated to pay taxes on what I get outside the country, of which I have also to pay taxes here. What am I left with? Really? And then these hooligans come in and steal everything, and they go outside and tell Kenyans, don't talk about it, don't mix pettiness in, and you are the thief. Why can't we just...
Do you want to tell us, you seem to be very annoyed with some politicians.
Yes,
do you
want
to tell us who it is and possibly...
Well, you read the newspapers. The journalists have already told us who are addressing these issues. MPs from Rift Valley are accountable. Some MPs from Rift Valley and some MPs from Central Province. I'm not now touching Western and Nyanza because they are not there. But those MPs who have been mentioned should resign or should go home or should all together stop talking to Kenyans, because A revolution is in the looming, an economic revolution.
One might argue that we're in a free country and they're free to speak, but the question is whether when they speak, Kenyans are hearing and what their reaction to their rhetoric and
Ask
their
any
speech is.
common Kenyans or any Kenyan in the street, they will tell you. And these people are not learning on what has happened in Burkina Faso. These people are not learning from history. That as much as you steal, you buy planes, lease them to the government, you become some kind of little petty politician, your day of reckoning will come. And when it comes, let them ask people like Nicholas Biwott. Thank you very much.
All right, and well, that's a story that's on the headlines, but also on the front page of the Standard, City Park killing, police charged. And this, of course, is a follow-up to a lady who was killed at City Park. And we've had quite a number of cases where policemen have been trigger happy, possibly used the trigger when they did not have to. There was no self-defense. And this is one of those classic stories where we are left with more questions than answers. Barack, your thoughts on possibly police reforms on a wider scale, and to whether maybe our police need to be trained to a point where pulling that trigger should be a completely last resort?
We are aware that this has become a sing-song. We have been talking about police reforms in earnest, particularly over the past 10 years. We remind ourselves that after the chaos of 2007, 2008, that we had what Kofi Annan and his team called Agenda 4. And Agenda 4 was about taking corrective measures about things we had done the wrong way and which had pushed us into that very unenviable situation that we found ourselves in. And police reforms became part of it. We remember that we talked about trigger-happy police killings in a diversity of places, in Nairobi, in the slum areas, in Kisumu, and elsewhere, in Luo Nyanza, in Eldoret, in Kisii, and the like. We came up with IPOA, which is supposed to be maintaining some oversight kind of role. And once in a while, you hear them whimpering over one or two cases of excesses. But on paper, it is there.
It is there.
Police reforms, they are very well documented, how they are supposed to be trained, how they are supposed to behave. In fact, we transformed the name from police force to police service. But we haven't gotten there.
The services are not yet coming through.
It goes back to the citizens. Eternal vigilance. Citizens must set a high bar and demand of those in leadership that is observed and respected. But to the extent that citizens look at these things and do nothing, we don't go anywhere. And you may ask me, which citizens are you talking about, Barack? Everywhere in the world, over the past 65, 70 years since the end of World War II, we have had the rise of a civil society. Do we have an active civil society in the country? Does it play its role? Because such things are led by civil society, and civil society must never accept to be subsumed into government. That was the mistake that we made when Mwai Kibaki became president of this country. Civil society was swallowed into government, and therefore there are no watchdog institutions in the country.
Their voice was muted. Prof, you're one who is well versed with the security forces, the police force, maybe from the eye of a policeman, because sometimes we tend to make judgments maybe based on what we know, but from the eye of a policeman, are they in a position where they were forced to use the trigger more often than is necessary?
Let me just correct this mayhem, meaningless mayhems and meaningless statements from politicians and from every Kenyan who come out and blame police in everything. They don't look into their eye, they look in the eye of the police. First and foremost, the government has failed the police. there is that money earmarked by the Treasury, which should be given to the Inspector General of Police directly, so that he can actually be held accountable. The money he can use in areas that are of need, like police, like sheltering, expenses, and what have you. The permanent secretaries in the Office of the President have been eating this money. I'm asking Kenyan on television to come here tomorrow with me and account for the monies given to the police. That money is lost within the Office of the President or Harambee House. It never reaches the Inspector General of Police, an office which is constituted under the Constitution. Now, when it comes to that, let me finish. Let me finish. I've been a police officer for many years. I've been in the intelligence, and I do not want any interruption on this. This is an area that I will speak with my heart.
That may be true, Prof, but allow me just to ask how that relates to the...
That's why I'm coming to this. That's why I'm coming to this one. Let's go to the backbone. Let's not go to hearsay. Let me not look at things like wherever. The police are starved of that money. The welfare of the police, nobody cares about it. Policemen are now buying uniform. They're now buying crackers from the streets to make their own uniform. Policemen living conditions, the psychological impact. If a police officer is transferred from Northeastern, a very hot hardship area, to Nairobi, he's not given that leewage period to actually get some kind of counseling, go on leave, come in, let's have an assessment of this officer.
Is that by any chance an excuse for them to be
It's not I'm not talking of those who are shooting.
Well, those were the ones we were talking about.
Yes, but let us look at the root cause. Let's look at the root cause. Why is it that Kenya Police has had this problem from the beginning? Why are we not addressing the financial issues? Why are we not looking at the reforms? Why would you like 5 or 6 police officers living in the same room? Where is the morale? If you go to Central Police Station today, you'll get police officers living in a Mabati house, 4 of them staged in a small room.
All right.
How do you expect these people to come out?
Whereas that is inhumane and possibly their social status needs to be checked, it's still no excuse for them to be
It's not an
excuse. We've had quite a number of Kenyans die in the hands of police.
That is true.
Completely unnecessarily. And we are also going through struggles. All of us are going through struggles. It's not just the police who have issues in terms of where they live. I think quite a number of Kenyans are also, struggling to get by.
That is very true. If you look at politicians, if you put them together in the same room, you'll find out that one is complaining against the other one. One has taken the underwear belonging to another one. One has taken socks or what have you. But when it comes to the police, the language you hear every day is blame, blame, blame. What we don't hear is, has any of these politicians, including my brother Barack Muluka, gone to Central Police Station for 24 hours, slept in a police house with a police constable, woken up in the morning to see how these people are taken into, gone to the armory, taken a gun, gone on beat for 9 hours, come back and see, and then come back and tell us what the
experience. All right, and unfortunately we are out of time. We are out of time for this segment, but maybe we'll continue because what we want to look at when we come back is the role of institutions. And possibly that would fall under that. I know Barack Muluka wants to have a go at that, but because of time, allow me to just take a break. When we come back, we want to look at the role of institutions, especially as we get to Budget Day, which is only 2 days away. It is now 2 minutes to 7. This is the point where I would like to release KTN Home for Life and Style to begin. But on KTN News, we are done with the newspaper review. We take a short break. When we come back, let's look at the role of institutions on Political Point. Do stay with us.